the office. Families are strong. So should I be off to one side?
Yeah. Or you can stay.
You can have business first or?
Wait, no, you're kind of first.
Okay.
We have you first.
Hi, no.
Okay. How about right up here? I'm Megan.
Oh, I'm there. Oh, sorry. Nice to meet you.
So nice. So exciting.
Oh, great. We're gonna.
Is it working?
Your end.
Because, okay, so Brad.
Wait, should I wait till you're gone? Or should we all sit there?
Yeah.
I do too. Yeah, we're in this too. Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, how are you doing? Good to see you.
And rinse my teeth.
I want to get in the hair.
Hey, Jose. Hi. And I have to be on mute, is that correct? So, how do I make it? Yes,
You have on the same thing.
Further section.
No.
Well, I guess maybe I'll.
All right.
I think I'm just doing the first part and you guys are doing the other part.
Yeah, Sean, you have it.
What?
You have it.
I'm on.
I'm sorry, you have your presentation. We are going to start. Good afternoon. Just for the SSC sake, just so you know that these are hot mics. So if you do talk with somebody to the side, you do want to press the button so it doesn't go through to the Zoom. The red button right there. Hi, I call the meeting to order at 5:04. Welcome and good evening to our 5th School Site Council for the 2023-2024 school year. Today we welcome Vice Principal Michelle Guarino as our administration representative, and we are excited to have you collaborate in our learning community. Thank you for being here. School Site Council is a team with representatives from families, schools, and communities. We work together to ensure that all students meet the state standards, academic standards, by helping shape AEA's decisions to how to direct the Title I funds, both compliantly and efficiently. We also, before we proceed with our agenda, I just want to take a moment to do some level setting. I love that term. It's a Sarah Peterson term. To continue to explore our why as an SSC as we develop our deliverables for this 2023-2024 academic year. Just kind of to make sure we understand that the function of the SS meeting is to connect as the 10 members of the School Site Council and do the business of the School Site Council as we prepare our clear-cut deliverables, what we are delivering in our assessment of these Title I funds and how they should be our recommendation of use for those. And we are thrilled to have the public here and also have public on Zoom. They are a welcomed addition to our meetings, and there are opportunities for the public to speak at this meeting. In addition to just kind of our business, we have 2 workshops where it is definitely more parent, family, school facing, where we ask for input. We had one at the annual meeting in October, and we are planning one for in March as we do our annual review of the family and parent policy. That's something we need to do annually, and we want family input for that. So it's a more workshop style, half an hour where we can invite the input. So first on our business is old business. We have an agenda item where we approve the minutes from our previous meeting on January 9th. This is a consent item, and SSC members have had the opportunity to look at the minutes for about a week. And is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve, just the note that it was January 16th, not January 9th.
Okay, so we will fix that.
No, it's correct on the agenda, you just misspoke.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and that's why you were the compliance officer for the detail. Okay, so Sarah has approved. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, and Julia is second to the motion. It has been moved by Sarah and seconded by Julia to approve the January 9th SSC minutes. All in favor, say aye. We need a little humor. Right? January 16th minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. So next item on our agenda is our speaker series. We host a speaker series of topics originated from input from past and present SSC members, from our community, from our annual meeting, our annual Title I meeting that we had in October. The topic for this evening is literacy at AEA, kind of an umbrella view. Sean Powell is here to first present. She is our elementary school literacy specialist for the elementary school. And we had the honor of working with Sean last year on SSC, and she is continuing to be a valuable contributor to our work. Also joining us, and this came out of, I'm jumping ahead a little bit because our new business is we have subcommittees, and our first subcommittee report is we have a needs assessment and evaluation monitoring subcommittee. One of our deliverables is to look at create a needs assessment so that we assess and discuss the Title I budget. And we met with Dr. Diaz, and the subcommittee and out of that session, we continue to talk about literacy at the middle school, and the things that are happening at the middle school that are super exciting. And he mentioned Laura Anderson and Maggie Porter. They also are joining us today, and they're here to talk a little bit about what they put into practice for addressing literacy for the middle school, and flex period and intervention. And hearing about their plan secondary after Sean's kind of global view of literacy will provide context to our recommendation.
I apologize.
And hopefully how we as an SSC.
Hello. There's a background noise. Can you hear us?
So, Sean, I'm going to start with you. Welcome, Sean. Here's your slideshow.
Thank you so much. Like Megan said, my name is Sean Powell, and I am currently one of the literacy specialists at AEA. We're sort of in an awkward position here because we don't want to turn our backs to you guys, but we don't want to turn our backs to you either. So we're sort of over here. This is my 14th year at AEA. My first 12 years were as one of the special education teachers here, and 2 years ago I started as the literacy specialist. Can you go to the first slide, please?
Of course.
Megan said I was going to give a global overview. My overview is really going to be limited more to the elementary school, and then Maggie and Laura are going to speak more to what's happening at the middle school for literacy. This is kind of a lengthy quote, but I felt like it was really fit well with IB and with what our viewpoint is about literacy at our school, at our organization. So I'm going to attempt to read it all here. Literacy is a bridge from misery to hope. It is a tool for daily life in modern society. It is a bulwark against poverty and a building block of development, an essential complement to investments in roads, dams, clinics, and factories. Literacy is a platform for democratization and a vehicle for the promotion of cultural and national identity. Especially for girls and women, it is an agent of family, health, and nutrition. For everyone, everywhere, literacy is, along with education in general, a basic human right. Literacy is finally the road to human progress and the means through which every man, woman, and child can realize his or her full potential. That was Kofi Annan, former Secretary of the United Nations.
Okay.
This really speaks to what we believe literacy is at our school and how important it is for our students, all of our students, to have access to learning to read and write and being able to participate fully in their school throughout their entire education career and then as they become citizens later as an adult. This is myself on the right and Laura Anderson, who's sitting over here. Laura is, when we started this school year, Laura and I split the duties for our literacy specialist.
Espérame,
He was doing grades
¿Juró?
4 through 8, and I was doing TK through 3rd. Since then, we really worked together and collaborated. So now she's supporting some of my grade levels with certain things, and I'm supporting some 4th and 5th graders. So it really isn't as divided down the middle as we started off with. Thank you, Megan. So at AEA, we have 2 things that are kind of our guiding lights when it comes to literacy and teaching our children. First is the International Baccalaureate Framework. So our teachers are creating units of study that are based on the principles of International Baccalaureate. And then their responsibility is also to use the state standards, the California Common Core standards, to make sure that we are teaching our students everything that is required of them to know in our state. So as you can imagine, this is a daunting task. It takes a lot of work, a lot of very intentional work, and it's something that we're always working on improving.
¿De
Yes,
español?
I don't know if this slideshow will be available for people to click on the link, but if you were interested in the state standards, there is a link at the very bottom. But the state standards are what we want our students to learn. The standards don't tell us how to teach these things to our students. They just tell us this is what they need to know at the end of each grade level. So it guides us in planning our instruction. At the elementary school, one of the things we're really committed to is using evidence-based curricula and practices that are supported by research. We don't want to, because we're at the elementary school, we have 50% of the time that our students are learning in English and 50% that they're learning in German. We have to be extremely efficient with our instructional practices because we don't have as much time as teachers do in an English-only school. So it's really important that we are utilizing tools that we know are effective and practices that we know are effective. So we use a curricula called SIPS in grades kindergarten, 1st, and 3rd. Our 2nd grade team has chosen a different, also evidence-based curricula called From Phonics to Reading. And then we also have been trained, some of our staff has been trained over the last 4 years in Orton Gillingham multisensory strategies, which can enhance the curricula that we're already using and help students learn through movements and motions that go along with the learning that they're doing. So the way that we support, in the way that I personally support, and the people that are the instructional assistants who are supporting me, when we know that students are struggling, when they're not keeping up with their peers, when they're not performing at what we would consider grade level at any point in time during the school year, we have a few different things that we do. Our big weapon is small group instruction. So that's happening in the classrooms. The teachers are leading small group instruction. So students are there in the classroom. They are receiving instruction that is explicit and that it addresses their current need, what they need to learn right now. We also offer small group instruction upstairs in what we call our literacy and language room, which is where Laura and I work. And so for students that are maybe not responding to the small group instruction in the classroom, or maybe need extra, then they might come upstairs and do a small group with me or with one of the instructional assistants who supports me. We also are working really hard this year to train all of our classroom aides and all of our instructional assistants in literacy, so that they have the knowledge and the understanding and the practice that they can step in when they're in a classroom and provide really good evidence-based strategies with students. So it kind of extends the reach of our teachers. So we've been training our paraprofessionals about once a month. They've gotten a literacy professional development that's going to continue for the whole year. Excuse me. So these are just a few of the things that Laura and I are working on at the elementary school, and some of it kind of bridges over with what middle school's focusing on too. One of the things we're really working hard on this year is developing systematic assessment for K through 8. And for what that means for us is choosing assessments that give us the information we need so that we know which students need further intervention, but also choosing assessments that don't take a lot of time for our teachers to free up more instructional time for them. So really figuring out a system where we can have universal assessments that are quick and easy for our teachers to administer, and then only diving deeper when students don't perform the way we expect them to on those initial quicker assessments. So we're working on developing that system. We're also working on intervention protocols. So really saying, hey, how does a student access additional small group support? What is the criteria for that? How long do they stay in that additional intervention? What is the criteria for them exiting that intervention? We're working on improving our data collection and analysis. This has been an exciting one for us because we're finally analyzing grade level data instead of just looking at individual students that are struggling. We've been able to look at the whole grade level and really look at where perhaps instruction needs to be happening for everyone. So we've been able to tell, like our first grade teachers at the beginning of the year, we noticed that about 60% of our students were not proficient in a certain skill that we expected them to be proficient in. So we got the word out to our first grade teachers, hey, we need to be teaching this to the whole class right away. And we've never been able to do that before this year, so that was exciting. The fourth thing that we're working on, like I mentioned just a minute ago, is just training and professional development for our other staff members that support students. Making sure they have the understanding, the knowledge, and the tools that they need so that we have many more people that can touch our students whenever they need help and support. I think that's it from me. We'll take questions at the end. We're gonna let the middle school, Maggie and Laura, speak to the middle school literacy things that are happening, but thank you for listening. And I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thanks, Sean. I'm Maggie Porter. I am one of the education specialists at the middle school. This is my first year here. It's like my 10th year in education. But when I started here, I was put in an ELA support group at the end of the day during our flex period, which is like our 6th period. Kind of students go to electives. It's a nice period where it's perfect for intervention. So we can really target skills there. If you want to go to the next slide, I think I'm going to be popping through them pretty quickly. Okay, so we had this beautiful time set up for students to go to get ELA support. But when I was there, I was realizing there's a lot of students with wide ranging abilities. So we have students who are at like our 25th percentile nationally on the MAP scores. And then we have students who are still needing phonics work. So that's like a huge gap. And it's hard for us to target all of those students within that classroom. So middle of first semester, I met with Dr. Diaz and Laura, and we were like, okay, we need to revamp this somehow. So we came up with this idea of using scientific research-based interventions in small groups. So if you want to go to the next slide, what we did was we took the bottom. So what we were doing to qualify for ELA support during this flex period, if students performed in the bottom 25% nationally on MAP, they were flagged. And we were like, okay, we need to target these students. We look at them, we talk to their teachers, we'd get more data, see samples from class. Maybe it was just a snapshot from that day that wasn't accurate, or Maybe students were performing higher on math, but they still need support that we're seeing in class. So we dove deeper into that, but then we were realizing, okay, there's still a few students who are bubbling up to the top that we really need to target this intervention. So if you go to the next slide, we broke these proposed ELA support groupings down into our bottom, like the 25% nationally that we really needed to target. And we're taking these lower, smaller groups down here from 1 through 4, which are our intensive small group interventions. So if you look at our first group, these are students who need foundational phonics. So they know they need letter sounds. And then the second group is they have their sounds, but putting it all together and then reading more fluently. And then we have our third group, which is fluency. They have all their sounds and blends. They can read, but not at a level that is going to create strong comprehension. So really targeting that fluency part. And then we have our group in comprehension, again, students who are reading fluently, but little diving deeper. And then if you look at our fifth group, we decided to do a vocabulary focus because a lot of our students are multilingual, and focusing on English vocabulary is an area that we felt would be a strong focus for them. And so we have different programs that we are using in each group, and each teacher who is trained in that group, so we can split through. So the first group, we have, like I said, students who need foundational literacy instructions. We're using Orton. That is highly research-based to be probably like, I don't know, it's kind of the premier like phonics program. So we have somebody who's running that, who is trained in that. And then the next group, which actually is the group that I'm running, is it's our students who have sounds and blends and need direct phonics instruction. And this is Orton. I'm also using Reading A to Z, which is an awesome library of reading stuff. So the next group is fluency, and we have another student, we actually have an instructional aide who's leading this, and I'm working closely with her to teach her all of the curriculum and then target skills with students specifically, so helping her dive into that. And these are students who read them less than 90 words per minute and less than 95% accuracy. We made these thresholds and criteria pretty specific, just so we can keep moving students through, and that we're grouping them very much accordingly. We're trying to get as much, if we're using this time, we want to use it very wisely. And then our next group, which is the comprehension group, we're using this program called STARI, and it's for adolescent reading intervention. It's research-based. It's for students. It's hard to find materials for students who are struggling in reading that are age appropriate. And this is like the best program I could find. It's pretty awesome. They have a lot of different topics that cover from like standing up for yourself or baseball or basketball. It's really cool. It doesn't feel like they're struggling. It seems like it's all relevant information to them. So I'm really into that. And then we have our final group, which is our largest group. And this is specific to each grade level. We'll run this. So one thing that I didn't mention is groups 1 through 4 are multi-grade. So we are taking students from 6th grade together, 7th grade together, 8th grade, and pairing them with where they're at skills wise. So, but this group 5, each grade level teaches their own. So we have a 6th grade specific, and there's the most students in those ones. So we have 3 different classrooms of group 5 going on. And then I went into this, like I said, we went into the nitty gritty of like what we're doing, because we're trying to make this as efficient and like, you know, they're going to high school. A lot of these students are going to high school soon. So we really want to like give as much as we can and focus and make sure we're putting them in the right group. So after 8 weeks, what we'll do is we'll look at all the data that we're collecting. We're collecting it through DIBELS and MAP and teacher input. I'm doing reading, you know, each week we're progress monitoring. Everybody has a folder, all of their information is going in there, and then we'll evaluate as a team at quarter if students can move into the different groupings. So if you look specifically, it shows like what our criteria is to move into the next one, and then hopefully we'll move students out of flex. That's the goal. So this is fluid still. This is our first time running it, but I think coming up with this criteria was important for us to make sure, again, that we're putting students in the right spot and that we're seeing growth. Like holding ourselves accountable to this progress monitoring is going to be critical into, you know, seeing how well this program works. So if you want to go to the next slide, I presented this to the team of teachers that we're working at, and research shows that if you follow strong scope and sequence, especially for students who are struggling, or students who have an identified disability, limited vocabulary, very structured, we're going to see the best outcomes. However, sometimes that can be kind of boring. So my whole goal is for all of these teachers to follow a strong scope and sequence and follow the programs, but also infuse art and creativity into things that some other students would be getting in their electives that they're not getting. They're getting an ELA support. However, I will say a lot of the students do like ELA support. There's a few students who graduated out and are like, I want to come back. So I have said this to the teachers, I really want them to follow the programs with integrity, because that's where we're going to see growth, but also make it relevant to the students too. And I think that may be my last slide. Oh, I kind of went into this. So progress monitoring, we're using DIBELS for our phonics and fluency groups. And then formal teacher data. Each group in each curriculum has exit slips, writing samples, reading samples. I'll have them record how often or how many words per minute, comprehension questions. All of those are going to be taken into account of whether we've seen growth. And then ultimately, we're hoping to see more growth on math scores as well. And we will reconvene as a group after 8 weeks and make a decision to move students in or out at quarter. So that is it for the middle school intervention group. This is just during the ELA support time. It's our pilot semester and hopefully it works. And we're doing it for the next semesters and we'll see students having a lot of growth.
I'm Laura Anderson. Like Sean Powell said, I support at the elementary and middle school in literacy and English language development for students who are classified as English language learners. We also call them multilingual learners. So my slide is pretty general. A lot of this will be open to questions at the end. It's a really broad topic and we could focus on a lot of different elements. So my position this year, I have been told, is thanks to this committee. So thank you for my job. And I want to fill you in on part of the work that I'm doing. So Sean and Maggie went over the work that I'm doing with them at elementary and at middle school. The other component that I am doing is working with our newcomer students. So the terminology newcomer refers to students that are new to the United States in the last few years. And we also, the students that I'm working with that are classified as newcomers are students with low to introductory levels of English. So the students that I'm working with right now, there's about 5 of them from Mexico and from Germany. So because the majority of my day is spent supporting at the elementary school, in the afternoons during that flex period that Maggie was just talking about, I'm dedicating that time to work in small group or do one-on-one support for the newcomer students. Newcomers need a lot of support and they need more support than I am able to give them. I am giving them a space where they feel like they belong, a space to ask questions. For students that speak Spanish, I'm able to speak to them in their native language. Newcomers also need a lot of emotional and social support. So I have a lot of questions about how teachers are supporting them in the classroom. How are we reaching out as a community to get students involved in clubs, extracurriculars? Those are all things that I think would be good for us to talk about as community on both sides. Another topic is long-term ELs. So long-term English learners is a term that refers to students who have been students who are not reclassified. Reclassification is a process that is related to LPAC testing, which is happening currently. LPAC testing is a standardized testing for students who are English language learners. Typically, students who are non-native English speakers, it will take them about 6 years to become fully literate, bilingual in their second or third language. In this case, we're talking about English. When families register their student for school, they have the option to register them as a native English speaker or a non-native English speaker. So families that opt for putting non-native English speaker, they will be given the initial LPAC, which will start them on their journey of taking the LPAC year after year to monitor their English progression. Or some students come in, they're native Spanish speakers at home. Boom, they're also bilingual. They grew up simultaneous bilingual. They pass the initial LPAC and they're not receiving English support anymore. Students who are considered long-term ELs are students who are not reclassified year after year. Reclassification essentially means that students have reached a level of English that is considered at grade level for where they're at. It's an extremely important thing. We want students to be reclassified, and it's problematic for students when they're not, and they're just sort of dragged through long-term the system without getting that intensive English support to help them get reclassified. So we're talking about students in the flex period that Maggie was talking about who have been stuck at a level 2, a level 3 on the LPAC, a level 4 in all language areas, can help them get reclassified so they're not receiving additional English support. These are students who have been identified as ELs for 6+ years. These are students who should be at grade level if they're getting the sufficient support. Long-term ELs means that students end up getting additional support forever and ever and ever, and then they miss out on things like electives in middle and high school. So I also have a lot of questions about moving forward. How are we, not just me, but how are we collectively on both campuses going to support those long-term ELs, because there's a lot of them, and our elementary feeds into the middle school. How to identify students and communicate with teachers about student needs. I've sort of touched on that a little bit. But moving into next year, I'm obviously new in this role, but how can we, before this year is over, identify our students that are multilingual learners? What are their needs? So August is here and boom, we're ready to support them. Not waiting till several months of assessment, seeing how things go. What can we do to support them right off the bat? I'd also, a lot of these are questions also that I have, sort of explaining what my role is, but questions that have come up because of the role that I have. What sort of training can we also give to teachers moving forward? GLAD is like a really phenomenal program that I know Megan can speak to that. I've done GLAD training. It's phenomenal. It's to help. I mean, you guys do it in German as well. I mean, it's just a language support approach. It's incredible and works for all grade levels. And then to wrap it up, what additional roles and support do we need moving forward? I think there needs to be more support of working with predominantly our EL, MLL multilingual learners at the middle school. Middle school is really impacted and there's more need here than I alone am able to provide. So I'd love for the committee we can get on board and brainstorm for what can we do moving forward so that all of our students and teachers too feel really supported. That's it.
Fantastic. I can see why Jose recommended you all to speak to us, especially with the middle school level. So this is our working time. This is your time for questions for Sean and Maggie and Laura. I do want to say that, you know, as an SSC who is charged to look at this pot of funds to help our most at-risk students achieve and meet the state standards, the fact that I know as a first grade English teacher, I know when we make recommendations, and the recommendations for positions or programs, in the past, a position might have been an elementary school assistant teacher, and I would have had an assistant teacher in my class a couple of years ago. And a couple of years ago, I would not have been able to justify that effectiveness with data. Right? Now, I know the training that my first grade assistant teacher is getting through Sean on Wednesdays, actually with strategies. And I see that's a tier 2 type of intervention for my first graders. And I can actually look at it in data. And so what that makes it exciting for an SSC is we can actually look at data now when we make recommendations. And the school is doing a phenomenal job, as you can see, with creating these structures. So goals, right? Any questions, comments, anything that spoke to you? I think it was worth this kind of deep dive in this thinking.
Can I share an observation? Okay,
Absolutely.
so I've been at Einstein for probably 17 years now. And I think two words come to mind now, just in listening to all of this. And the words are intentionality and also systems. And I see the cohesiveness that we have going on across our two schools now. And it makes me really proud. I see the training that our support, our classroom instructional aides are receiving. It's really high quality. And knowing that we're using research-based programs like OG, I was in meetings with teachers today and I've heard nothing but positives about this program. So also speaking to, moving forward a little bit, we do have 4 more elementary school teachers going to GLAD training this year. And Dr. Diaz, I believe we have 4 from middle school as well. So as one of my favorite educators, Rita Pearson, says, we're on the road. So.
Thank you, Michelle. And Sarah, I believe you wanted to.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for that intense look at what's happening across the LEA. I enjoyed hearing from y'all. And as you mentioned several times, the evidence-based or research-based programs and approaches and systems being built. And I have a question about last year, where I learned from being on SSC with Sean last year that there was an LEA-wide focus on a literacy framework. Various terms were thrown out. And I never remember receiving this in-depth look with that literacy framework. And so my question is, with that investment in the literacy work from last year, how is that impacting? What is the through line from last year to this year? So the primary focus of the literacy framework trainings that we engaged in last year was teacher clarity and how that impacts student learning. And so the pull through this year is that we're making a concerted effort to really look at that piece as it relates to our instructional practices in the classroom. So what that means is that our students know what they are learning, why they are learning it, and how they will know that they're successful. So that's right. This year, we did all of the learning together last year. This year, I don't know for sure what's happening at middle. Maybe Maggie knows more, but at elementary, our administrators right now are meeting with teachers, and we have a 1-point rubric to look at how we are doing those things in our classroom or in our teaching area. So that is our big focus right now, is taking that piece of what we learned and making sure we are applying it and using it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because I know that, of course, teacher clarity per the body of research is one of the highest impact practices that a teacher and educator can employ, and it's easier said than done. I asked that question because I heard a variety of programs being mentioned, from OG to Starry to Read Naturally. Is that the other one I saw? And to utilize and operationalize those programs, in addition to the initial training, which is quite an investment in resources, is the maintenance and ensuring, as we saw on that continuum, yes, we want to have creativity, and yes, these need to be done. These routines are very exact and precise in the movements and the articulations. For it to be wielded with the highest efficacy, it really does need to be monitored and coaching and feedback. And I know that you are 3 people for 1,000, student LEA. So I share a lot of those wonderings on when Orton Gillingham, for example, is such an intense training, and as well as GLAD training with the initial 2 days and the 4-day in-person institute. These are very time intensive upfront, and yet in my experience in working with schools and districts on the implementation science end of it, Fix It and Blaze will say from the California ELA framework, that is where the rubber meets the road. And so I'm wondering, yes, training is excellent. And where is that teacher clarity, and where is a cohesive instructional framework going to live? And I'm sort of actually thinking out loud or thinking with you, but I'm excited to see how this articulates into a several years plan in getting not just the training in place and the stuff, continuing to build capacity and coaching and reflection for staff and para educators and IAs, et cetera.
Part of what Sean and I are doing at the elementary school, someone mentioned on Wednesdays, about once a month, is we're doing literacy support training for paraprofessionals. And I really do want to just highlight that, because we noticed at the beginning of the year, like walking into classrooms, there was a lot of paras just sort of floating or not really knowing exactly what to do and where to be. And like, that's another, intelligent body in the room that we can use to help support students in really concerted and precise ways. And so I think part of doing that training is to share the knowledge that we have between us, but also to like empower other staff members to support students. Like, knowledge is not just held within the classroom teacher, it's from every adult, and every adult has something that they can share with students. So I think, just sort of not really answering your question, but just sort of like piggybacking off of that, I think that's what I would want to see moving forward is, and the question is, how can we empower more staff? What is the training that they need? And I agree, I did the OG training this year. It's really long. It's many, many hours. It's very intense and it's very expensive. But the knowledge that I got from that, I can share with other people now too. So it ends up being sort of like an impacted.
Well, and I just love how you talked about we, and when you talk about LTELs, and I felt that authentic call to action and how you spoke, because if an LTEL does not, if that child does not reclassify ASAP, they are at greater risk of not graduating with their high school diploma, which is an essential part of our democracy's, upward social economic mobility. So I'm thrilled to hear you speak to that, to us, and to carry that voice and to have that call to action, and how you phrased it as we. Yeah, there's no one person that is going to move that needle. It is a we. So I'd love to continue to think together. This is like my nerd hour.
And that's exactly why we invited you. We are going to move on with our meeting, and we just thank you so much for sharing what you're doing, your goals, your plans, your aspirations. And again, we as an SSC want to bolster and amplify your efforts for what you're doing. And so much is really happening. So this is just an exciting way to start getting the word out of all this wonderful work. So thank you. So we are, that's essentially, we have subcommittee reports. That's our new business. We have 4 subcommittees. Our subcommittees do kind of the work to bring to the SSC. We're not voting today. This is still informational. The first subcommittee is the needs assessment And you can hear already with Laura's questionings where we are starting to land as an SSC for our summary statement, which would be our recommendation to the school to for these use of funds, and our statement of what we see as greatest need and the potential root causes. And we are definitely landing on that middle school, and in particular, that entry into middle school, and in particular, that sixth grade entry into coming into middle school. And the idea that we have AA kids coming through, but we also have a good percentage of students coming in from outside of AEA. And how can we capture what they know through assessment so that our wonderful sixth grade team can hit the ground running day one? So that's where we, as a needs assessment, are landing as we consider our summary statement and our recommendations, our further recommendations. So I'm going to leave it at that because we are running a little bit out of time. We do have the discussion of focus groups. We talked with Dr. Diaz about the idea of we want to hear from students. Student-centered voice is super important. The idea of potentially even asking some of these newcomers, some of these kids in these step level intervention, just tell us how you started at AEA and what kind of supports were in place. We think that would be a highly beneficial way to get some information. And then, of course, we want to hear from some families that are new to AEA at that entry level. 4th, 5th, 6th grade is a big entry level. So we're continuing to talk about the use of focus groups and getting a little bit more input from those families. Any questions about the needs assessments and kind of where we're headed as a needs assessment and evaluating? We did data looks. There's some really neat tools that Brad, again, just so much happening right now that Brad and Dr. Diaz are finding out through data through PowerSchool, where you can look at data where you have, you're gonna have to help me, Dr. Diaz, you have the kids who are gaining, who are making progress.
Gainer sticker slide.
Gaining sticker sliders. So we can get so nuanced now, the school is getting so nuanced with this data that you can look at the kids who are making these gains and kids who are kind of staying where they are, and then kids who are sliding backwards, which would be particularly interesting to an SSC for our recommendation. So that was super exciting. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. So looking at this graphic, we have the budget and the needs assessment. So the next would be the family and parent engagement. Julia, I believe you're going to speak to this. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it big. Yay!
Okay, so for the promotion piece of parent and family engagement, in order to get new families, volunteers more involved, we felt that we needed to update the definitions of SSC and Title I. And we figured that would, if we get everybody in, we can get wider school community feedback and perspective. For the policy, we revised the parent-family engagement policy, and we've got the workshop in March for that. And then we'll be presenting to the board in April. And then we have our education speaker series, as you saw with Sean and I'm sorry. Thank you, Lauren. I'm so sorry. March, we'll be doing community outreach and student advocacy with Veronica, and then Grace Ridgway in April for special education. And I believe that's, oh, elections have to take place in the first 30 days of the school year from now on, and subcommittee meeting coming up on the 19th.
Oh, yeah,
Remember, just add a few comments.
Yeah, go
So, can you back one?
of course.
So just a few more details. So, our big deliverable for this subcommittee is the review and revision of the parent family engagement policy. And so we're gonna have a focus group. It's gonna have about 4 representatives from parents and families, in addition to the voice that all the SSC has, the 5 hospital, Old Fair, school personnel. And, it's the need, it's the humor. School personnel, 5 reps, and then the 5 family reps. Family reps, we want to have a larger swath, if you will, a more representative voice. And so we're sort of delving into different ways to get focus group members, not only for our subcommittee, but for the other subcommittees. We're going to have a workshop with those focus group folks that's going to take up the first half of the next meeting that we have. We're going to model after DLAC and the January meeting, what they did in terms of gathering ideas for both the review and vision. And then thereafter, we'll make whatever revisions are necessary, and then present to the board of trustees whatever recommendations we have for that revision. And so if you're out there listening and I haven't contacted you already, if you're interested in being part of a focus group, I see some staff that maybe presented today that I may try to recruit. But we're looking for representative voices to make sure that our policy, which defines how AEA approaches parent family engagement, so that really sets up the ideal guidelines.
Wonderful. Any questions or comments for our family parent engagement subcommittee? Wonderful. Thank you, Julia and Matt. The next subcommittee report is our budget, and Sarah is going to lead this one.
All right, so we did, I think we last left with, we were asking questions, so we did get some answers, and we were able to go through and dig through a fair amount of that information. We're really focusing right now on the 22-23 budget because we have the actuals from that, and that's currently what took place last year, where this current school year is still in flux because it doesn't become actually funded until the funds come in. What we did learn is that for 22-23, the vast majority went, which was just over $207,000, went to 4 classroom aid salaries and benefits that they are elementary school and targeted English language support. There is a little bit of a concern that there was $700 that we learned about only in doing this review. This was an expense listed as uniforms. We still don't have full details on it, and it was new to the SSC, which in an ideal world, it should not be. So we're delving further and are currently working to set up meetings to get further information on what that is and also how to set up a structure going forward. So we get to have that partnering voice in where the funds are being distributed at. And then for, as I mentioned, this upcoming school year or this current school year, what is currently budgeted is just over $218,000. We won't have the actual until it's funded at the end of the school year, so we won't have any more in-depth data than that. But it again is primarily, this one is entirely focused on the 4 instructional aid positions. Next slide, please.
I always want to work there.
So what we have left to do in terms of getting our goals for the year, which is actually having the SSC vote on a budget recommendation. We're currently working and setting up meetings with admin to have that conversation. So we're hoping either somewhere, February, March, or March, April, depending on calendaring, we get to have kind of that process. So we get the presentation for 24-25 budget looking forward so that if we have input, it can actually occur at a meaningful time. And then our goal will be to present in either April or May, depending on when it is available for the SSC to vote on the distribution of the Title I funds for the 24-25 school year. Our next meeting is scheduled on Zoom, February 20th at 4 p.m.
Any questions or comments or discussion? Thank you, Sarah. And our last subcommittee is our LCAP, which is the Local Control Accountability Plan. And Sarah Peterson will speak to this.
So our current LCAP has these 5 goals. And I start this subcommittee section with that because that's been our third point, naturally being the local control and accountability plan. As a team, reflecting on what we have found in our respective spheres of influence and control. So for example, with Veronica, who is the co-chair with me, in really looking at first blush, goal 5, which might seem not as amazingly attentive, you know, compared to all materials and things needed for all academic success. Yet in listening to Veronica, if students are not in the seats, especially our most vulnerable and are most vulnerable, then how will the other goals be able to be realized? They won't be. So it's been an incredibly important opportunity for parents and staff in this subcommittee to listen to our respective stories and get perspectives. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. And so what we are hoping to move into in this final stretch of this year is really this portion, the screenshot from the 23-24 LCAP, where administration sits down and documents and creates a summary of the process of engaging educational partners, such as the DLAC, SSE, and the AEA community at large. And you can see that there are call outs there in the 23-24 LCAP for educational partners. How was that message? How was feedback obtained? What were the settings? What were the dates? And so we are looking forward to partnering with administration and providing that voice so that this aspect, for example, of LCAP really does reflect the DLAC, the SSE, and focal group voice. You can go ahead and forward. Yep. So we did not meet in January 2024. We really didn't have anything further to discuss at this point. And so we have a meeting set for the end of the month, which we hope allows enough lead time for budget to get some of those final answers answered, to have the PFE, Parent and Family Engagement Committee, convene their focus group, and as well as the needs assessments to tie up their loose ends, because pending what comes out of those 3 committees will inform, again, what we do as an LCAP subcommittee in putting forth recommendations for the for AEA leadership and administration to consider. We hope at that point, after hearing from the 3 prior subcommittees, that we can then convene a focus group, replicate in a shorter amount of time the process that we've engaged in as a subcommittee of reflecting on the 23-24 LCAP goals and looking at what bubbled up from those 3 bullets, taking into consideration our guest speaker series. The content delivered tonight, I think, will be really powerful and impactful to share at a focus group, and then being able to move forward by our March meeting with some targeted recommendations, again, for consideration by leadership.
Any questions, comments, or discussion for the LCAP subcommittee? And Sarah, you put this in, it's just such a great reminder of what we strive to be as an IB school. And so many of these attributes I have seen tonight. Thinking always kind of pops up to me, being thinkers and strategic and intentional. So that's exciting to see that. So that's our new business. The next item on our agenda is a standing item. It is an opportunity for the DLAC, which is the District English Learner Advisory Committee, to speak with the SSE. There's a real connection between SSE and DLAC. And I just want to stress to anybody here that it's a real treat to go to the DLAC meeting. They're all in Spanish. Michelle is, I'm going to have you speak to it and maybe say when the next meeting is and invite us to come.
Got it. We'll do. Well, I know it's the same day as that budget committee meeting, because that's why I looked at the slide. There's like February 20th at that time. Okay, okay, good.
We'll be there next time.
Okay. So just a quick recap on last month's DCAP. We had our needs assessment meeting on January 23rd, and we shared data with the attendees. We shared CASP data, LPAC data, and also absenteeism data. And then we gave the families an opportunity to really just look at the data, pose some questions, share some input. And that input has been shared with the leadership team. It's being shared with staff as well. And I can share it in more formal, format with SSC as well. So just there was a few themes from all of that input from the families. So there are 4 themes. First theme was just really literacy because of the need for, or the difficulty, I should say, of the LPAC testing in regards to reading and writing. So that was a big noticing and wanting to really focus on literacy, TK through 8. And then also family engagement connected to literacy. Like, what are we doing to really bring home the message of that 30 minutes a night? What are we doing to celebrate reading so that, to bring up the literacy aptitude of all of our students? The other area was math. The families who were attending had noticed our CASP math scores and had some wonderings about that. And there was discussion around math vocabulary and how that can really limit the access to math for our multilingual English learners. And then also some wonderings about after school support for math, whether that can happen at Afterstein or in some other fashion. The third area was attendance, as Sarah had alluded to, and just talking about how we can foster stronger family connections and engagement with families that are experiencing or have students with chronic absenteeism. And then the last area was testing. That was a topic as well. Just, how are we preparing our students for testing? How are we informing and preparing our families when testing comes around? And even the language of testing, teaching students about the LPAC, giving them those opportunities to practice, teaching them the connected vocabulary. So that's just the recap of that night. And then our next meeting is February 20th at 4:30. So elementary school.
Wonderful. Any questions or comments or discussion for DLAC? Okay. We do have an opportunity for public comment. This is the point of our agenda where the public may speak to the SSE on non-agenda items. The SSE cannot act on any of the items of the agenda, but we welcome the opportunity to hear from our community. Brad, is anybody on Zoom asking to make a comment? Okay, thank you. And anybody in our audience, thank you for being here. Just 30 seconds. Anybody have a 30-second appreciation? We like to be so timely. It is 6:05. I think for just a moment of appreciation.
I would like to thank you, DLAC. I didn't attend in person to your needs assessment meeting, but I was online. And thank you for being such a model for how we can proactively and inclusively obtain family voice.
And I would like to thank Maggie and Sean and Laura for coming today. Your talk was many things, but the word energizing comes to mind. And given the intent of Title I, given the intent of the SSC relative to Title I, I think hopefully we can partner and collaborate to help move your mission forward.
And then I just really love, Laura, how you ask questions. I think questions are a great thing to do. You know, we're not up here with answers. But we asking, making, noticing, wonderings, connecting dots. And I just really appreciate how Laura modeled that in her presentation at the end, which happened to be very well aligned to what we were thinking. So thank you. Anybody else? So, we have concluded the February 6th SSD meeting. This meeting, our next meeting is Tuesday, March 5th at 4:30 to 5 is food and mingle, and 5 to 6 is our actual meeting. We are going to have that workshop for half of it, and then our business for the second half of it. And it will be at the AEA Elementary School. And it is 6:07, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.